Welcome to my channel. Subscribe to the channel and listen to my stories every day. I sat in my car, gripping the steering wheel, staring at the empty driveway of our suburban home. The sun had long dipped below the horizon, and the streetlights cast an orange glow over the quiet neighborhood. Amanda wasn't home yet. Lately, she was always late, work, she claimed. The excuses seemed plausible at first, but over the past few weeks, I had grown suspicious. Little things. Her phone was always glued to her hand, face down on the table. She'd laugh at texts that she'd quickly dismiss when I asked what was funny. The shift had been gradual, almost imperceptible at first, but now it was like a storm brewing just below the surface. We had been married for 15 years. In the early years, we'd talk for hours about everything, dreams, life, the future. But now, the silence was deafening. I wasn't sure when the conversations had dried up, when the distance had started to creep in, but I knew it was there. And I hated it. I exhaled slowly, trying to push the bitter thoughts from my mind. Maybe I was overthinking it. Maybe the stress at her new job was really what had her preoccupied. People drift sometimes, it didn't necessarily mean the end. But something gnawed at me, that primal instinct, telling me that there was more to the story. Amanda's headlights appeared in the distance, cutting through the dark. I sat up in my seat as she pulled into the driveway. I had been sitting here for nearly an hour, pretending to scroll through my phone, but in reality, I was waiting, watching. As she parked beside me, I caught a glimpse of her in the rearview mirror. She wasn't rushing, wasn't flustered. Her face was calm, even happy. That part hurt more than I expected. I forced a smile as she stepped out of her car and approached mine. "Hey, you're home late," I said, keeping my tone casual. She smiled back, but there was a flicker of something in her eyes. Was it guilt, or was I just imagining it? "Yeah, sorry. Work's been crazy. Everything okay?" I asked, leaning out of the car window. "Yeah, just a long day." She leaned in to kiss me on the cheek, but the kiss felt hollow, like she was going through the motions. She didn't even make eye contact as she pulled away. I watched her walk into the house, that familiar sinking feeling settling into my gut. Something was definitely wrong. I'd been ignoring the signs for too long, trying to convince myself that it was just a rough patch. But that night, as I sat alone in the dark, I knew I couldn't keep lying to myself. I needed to know the truth. The next morning, I woke up before Amanda. She was still asleep, curled up on her side, her phone tucked beneath her pillow. I quietly slipped out of bed and into the kitchen, my mind racing. I needed to know what was going on. I had tried talking to her, but every time I brought it up, she would brush me off. "It's just work stress," she'd say. But I didn't believe that anymore. Over the next few days, I kept a close eye on her. The pattern was the same, late nights at work, secretive texts, and hushed phone calls. I knew something was up, but I didn't have proof. Yet. That changed one evening when she left her iPad on the kitchen counter. It was synced to her phone, and as I stood there, staring at it, I felt the weight of the moment pressing down on me. I hesitated. Was I really going to invade her privacy like this? But the doubts, the nagging suspicion, wouldn't let me rest. I needed answers. I unlocked the iPad, feeling a pit form in my stomach as I scrolled through her messages. Most were harmless, work-related, but then I saw it. A message from someone named James. I opened it, and my world shifted. "Can't wait to see you tonight, baby," his text read. My heart pounded in my chest as I scrolled further, reading through weeks of messages. "Last night was incredible. I still feel your touch," Amanda had replied. The air seemed to leave the room all at once. I felt like I had been sucker punched. My wife, the woman I had built a life with, was having an affair. I stood there, numb, rereading the messages as the truth settled in. She had been meeting him for months, right under my nose. Every late night, every work trip, it was all a lie. My hands shook as I locked the iPad and set it back on the counter, as if it had burned me. What now? I could confront her, demand answers, yell, scream, throw things. But no, that would only give her power. She'd deny it, spin more lies, and maybe even turn it around on me. I wasn't going to let her have that satisfaction. Instead, I decided to play the long game. If she thought she could get away with this, she was wrong. For the next week, I pretended everything was fine. I smiled, laughed, even kissed her goodbye every morning as she left for work. I played my part, all while carefully planning my revenge. Amanda didn't know it, but I had placed a GPS tracker in her car the night I found the texts. I was going to catch her in the act. On Friday, she told me she had another work trip, this time for the weekend. "It's just a short conference," she said as she packed her bags. I watched her, biting back the anger that threatened to spill over. "Sure, have a great time," I said, my voice calm, steady. Inside, I was seething. As soon as she left, I checked the tracker. She wasn't heading to any conference. She was driving straight to a hotel in the next town over. I followed the little blinking dot on my phone as she checked into the hotel, and my suspicion turned into cold, hard fury. This was it, the proof I needed. I sat in my car outside the hotel, waiting. Hours passed as I watched couples come and go, my stomach churning with every minute that ticked by. Finally, just before midnight, I saw them, Amanda and James, walking out of the lobby, laughing, holding hands. I gripped the steering wheel so tight my knuckles turned white. I wanted to storm out of the car, confront them right there, make a scene. But I didn't. I had planned something better. Instead, I took a photo of them together, one clear enough to make my case in court, and drove home, feeling strangely calm. The next morning, Amanda returned home, her fake smile plastered on her face as she kissed me hello. "How was the conference?" I asked, playing along. "Oh, it was great. Really informative," she lied, effortlessly. That was the moment I knew I had won. She had no idea what was coming. As the days passed after Amanda's conference, I kept up the charade. Every morning I'd smile, kiss her on the cheek, and wave her off as she left for work. But inside, I was stewing, plotting my next move. The image of her and James leaving the hotel hand in hand was burned into my mind. It wasn't just the betrayal that stung, it was the ease with which she lied to my face. The woman I had built a life with was a stranger now. But I kept my cool. This wasn't going to end with me flipping out and throwing her out of the house in some dramatic scene. No, I wanted her to feel it. I wanted her to realize, too late, what she had done. Revenge was going to be slow and cold, just the way it should be. I spent the following week gathering more evidence. I wasn't just going to rely on that one photo of them leaving the hotel. I needed more. So I checked the tracker every day, taking note of when and where she went. Sometimes she'd head straight to work, other times to a cafe or a park, places she never mentioned to me. And once, she went back to that hotel. Every time she slipped away, I was ready, documenting everything. I even went through her emails again, though I felt a wave of disgust wash over me every time I did. It was a strange thing to read your own wife's flirty, intimate exchanges with another man. They had a rhythm to them, a back and forth that only deepened my hatred. She talked to him like she once talked to me, before the lies, before she decided I wasn't enough. I kept screenshotting everything, storing it away for later. Then, I started moving pieces into place. I met with a divorce attorney, laying out all the evidence I had. The attorney, an older woman with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor, listened carefully as I explained everything. When I showed her the pictures and the emails, she barely raised an eyebrow. "People like your wife always think they won't get caught," she said, flipping through the screenshots. They get careless. Overconfident. She set the papers down and looked at me directly. If you play your cards right, you'll come out of this just fine. We can go for the house, any joint accounts, and alimony, if you want to push for it. I nodded, my mind already racing with plans. What do I need to do? Just keep doing what you're doing. Don't confront her yet. Build your case. And when you're ready to serve her, we'll hit her hard. I left the office feeling a strange sense of calm. The plan was coming together. Amanda had no idea that everything was already in motion, that her little secret life was about to implode. But I still needed to wait for the perfect moment. The following Friday, she told me she was going to have a girls' night out. It was always the same excuse. I played the supportive husband, even joking, "Don't have too much fun without me." She laughed, kissed me goodbye, and left. The tracker showed her heading straight to James' place. That night, I decided to make my first real move. I sent her a text around 10 p.m., just as I knew she'd be wrapped up in her little affair. "Miss you. Wish you were home. Can't wait to see you tomorrow," I wrote. It was innocent enough, but I knew it would catch her off guard, maybe even make her squirm a little. Sure enough, it took her a full hour to respond. "Miss you too. Just got caught up with the girls. See you in the morning." Lies. All lies. But I smiled, knowing it was only a matter of time now. The next day, she came home around noon, looking a little disheveled but putting on the same mask she always did. "Sorry I got home late," she said with that fake cheerfulness. "We ended up staying out longer than expected." "No problem," I replied casually. "I figured you were having fun." For a moment, there was a flicker of something in her eyes, nervousness, maybe. But she covered it up quickly, heading upstairs to shower and change. She didn't realize I already knew where she had been, what she had been doing. She thought she was still in control. That afternoon, while Amanda was in the shower, I started executing the next phase of my plan. I logged into our shared bank account and quietly transferred a chunk of money into my personal account. Nothing drastic, just enough to start separating my finances from hers. Then, I went through the bills and canceled a few subscriptions she liked, ones I didn't care about. She wouldn't notice right away, but when she did, it would just be another layer of confusion for her. I also contacted a realtor to start getting the house appraised. It wasn't that I wanted to sell it, far from it, but I needed to know what I was dealing with. If we were going to divide assets, I wanted to make sure I came out ahead. I wasn't going to lose the home I had worked so hard to build just because she decided to throw away our marriage for a fling. As I sat in front of my computer, setting everything in motion, I couldn't help but feel a strange sense of power. Amanda had thought she could control the narrative, keep me in the dark, but now I was the one pulling the strings. She didn't even realize that her world was about to crumble. The following week, I decided it was time to get some face-to-face evidence. Amanda had another work meeting planned, so I arranged to drop by unexpectedly. It was risky, but I wanted to see the look on her face when she realized she was caught. I drove to the hotel where she was meeting James, and just as I expected, there they were, sitting in the lobby, laughing over drinks. My stomach turned as I watched them, Amanda leaning in close, her hand brushing his arm. It was disgusting. But I didn't confront them. Not yet. Instead, I pulled out my phone and snapped a few pictures. They didn't even notice me standing there, lurking in the background like a ghost. Satisfied, I turned and left the hotel, my mind racing with how this was all going to unfold. Soon, very soon, she'd have no choice but to face the truth. The house of lies she had built was about to come crashing down, and I would be standing on the other side, watching it burn. By the time I got home, Amanda was already texting me. Work ran late. Going to grab dinner with a few coworkers. Be home late. Another lie. But I played along, as always. No problem. "See you when you get home," I texted back. I could almost feel her relief from miles away. She still thought she was in control. But control was something she had lost the moment I decided to stop being the naive husband. This was my game now, and she was playing right into my hands. As I sat on the couch that evening, sipping a beer and watching TV, I smiled to myself. I had all the evidence I needed. The photos, the texts, the proof of her affair. It was time to wrap this up, and I couldn't wait to see the look on her face when she realized just how thoroughly she had been outplayed. Amanda's lies were unraveling, and she didn't even know it yet. The next move would be the final one. The knockout blow. The day I had been waiting for was finally here. After weeks of gathering evidence, plotting, and playing the clueless husband, I was ready to bring Amanda's world crashing down. I had spent too many sleepless nights going over every detail, every text message, every photo, and now the pieces were in place. I could feel the tension in my chest building up, the anticipation of watching her face when she realized her secret was out. Amanda had no idea. In fact, she was planning another weekend with James, this time at some cabin a few hours away. She had spun me the same old story about a work retreat, saying she would be gone until Sunday. I played along like always, kissed her goodbye, and told her to have a great time. I could barely contain my smirk as she drove off, completely unaware of the storm headed her way. After she left, I took a deep breath. This was it. Everything I had been working toward was about to unfold. I made a call to my lawyer, letting her know that the papers were ready to be served. Then, I packed a small bag. I wasn't going to sit around waiting for Amanda to come home and explain herself. I had bigger plans. Before I left, I sat in our living room, looking around at the life we had built together. The framed photos on the walls, vacations, family gatherings, anniversaries, mocked me now. How many of those smiles had been real? How many moments had she been thinking about someone else while pretending to be mine? I felt a surge of anger, but I pushed it down. This wasn't the time for rage. That would come later, when Amanda finally realized what I had done. I grabbed my keys and headed out the door. My first stop was the bank. Over the last few weeks, I had already moved most of our joint funds into my personal account, but today, I was closing the joint account altogether. Amanda wouldn't notice right away, she was too busy with her little affair, but when she did, it would be another nail in the coffin. I signed the paperwork, thanked the teller, and left feeling a little lighter. Next, I drove to the house of a close friend, Steve. Steve had been one of the few people I trusted through all of this. He knew about Amanda, about James, and he had been there to listen when I needed to vent. Now, he was about to play a part in the final act of this twisted drama. "You ready for this?" Steve asked as I pulled into his driveway. "More than ready," I said, gripping the steering wheel for a moment before getting out of the car. "She's not going to see it coming." We sat in his living room, going over the plan one last time. It was simple, really. Amanda thought she had the upper hand, that she could keep lying to me while living her secret life with James. What she didn't know was that I had set everything in motion to expose her. Today, while she was away with him, she would be served with divorce papers. But that wasn't the end of it. I wanted to hit her where it hurt the most, her pride. "Do you think she'll try to fight it?" Steve asked, leaning back in his chair. "She might," I said. "But I've got more than enough evidence. She'll know it's pointless." I pulled out my phone and opened the folder where I had saved all the proof, the text messages, the photos, the emails. It was all there, neatly organized. When Amanda tried to deny it, I'd show her everything, and she would have no choice but to admit the truth. There would be no more lies, no more pretending. As the afternoon wore on, I found myself pacing around Steve's house, feeling the weight of what was about to happen. This wasn't just about the divorce or the betrayal anymore. It was about taking back control of my life. Amanda had made me feel like a fool, like I was blind to what was going on right in front of me. But now, I was the one in control. I was the one pulling the strings. When the time came, I left Steve's house and drove to the hotel where Amanda and James had booked a room. I wasn't going inside, not yet, but I wanted to be close when the papers were served. I parked a few blocks away, out of sight, and waited. The hours ticked by slowly, my nerves on edge. I kept imagining the look on Amanda's face when the server showed up at their door, when she realized her little game was over. At precisely 4 p.m., I got a text from the lawyer's office. "She's been served," it read. I couldn't help but smile. I imagined Amanda opening the door to the server, confused at first, then realizing what was happening as the papers were thrust into her hands. I could almost see her panic, the way she would look at James for support, only to realize there was nothing he could do to fix this. But I wasn't done yet. I pulled out my phone and called Amanda. It rang twice before she picked up, her voice sounding strangely distant. "Hey, what's up?" she asked, trying to sound casual. "Where are you right now?" I asked, my voice calm. "Oh, just, at the retreat," she lied. "We're in the middle of a meeting, actually. I'll call you later." I felt a surge of satisfaction hearing her lie, knowing she had no idea I was sitting just a few blocks away, watching everything unfold. "No need to call me later," I said. "I just wanted to let you know, you've been served." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. I could almost hear her scrambling for words, trying to make sense of what I had just said. What do you mean?" she stammered, the panic starting to creep into her voice. "You know exactly what I mean, Amanda," I said coldly. "The papers. The divorce. It's over." Her silence was deafening. For the first time, she didn't have a clever lie or an excuse ready. She was caught, and she knew it. "I hope James was worth it," I added before hanging up. I sat in the car for a moment, letting the weight of the moment sink in. It was done. She knew. And now, she would have to face the consequences of her actions. Later that evening, I returned home, feeling a strange mixture of relief and anger. The house was quiet, almost eerily so. I sat on the couch, staring at the empty space where Amanda used to sit, and for the first time in weeks, I allowed myself to feel the hurt, the betrayal, the deep, gnawing pain that had been buried beneath my need for revenge. This wasn't the end of my journey, but it was a turning point. Amanda's lies had been exposed, and now, it was up to me to rebuild my life, on my own terms. As I sat there, I realized something. Revenge had been satisfying, yes, but it hadn't erased the pain. It hadn't fixed what Amanda had broken. But it had given me one thing: closure. And maybe that was enough for now. As the days passed after Amanda had been served, I thought I would feel a sense of victory, but the high from watching her squirm didn't last as long as I expected. At first, there was satisfaction in knowing I had outplayed her, that she would face the consequences of her betrayal. I had envisioned a clean break, a swift end to the nightmare that our marriage had become. But reality had a way of twisting even the best-laid plans. Amanda didn't come home that night. In fact, she stayed away for several days. I figured she was hiding out at James' place, probably trying to figure out her next move. It didn't bother me. I was content, or at least I thought I was, to let her live in her mess while I took control of the house, the finances, and the future. But as the weekend came and went, something gnawed at me. It wasn't regret, I was sure of what I had done, but an emptiness that grew stronger with each passing hour. I would walk through the house, expecting to feel free, but instead, it was like I was walking through a graveyard of memories. Every room held a piece of us, even the ones tainted by her lies. The silence, once a welcome reprieve from the tension between us, now felt oppressive. I wasn't prepared for how alone I would feel. On Monday morning, I got a call from Amanda's lawyer. She wanted to negotiate a settlement, figures, I thought. I knew she'd try to get her hands on whatever she could. I agreed to meet, wanting to get this over with as quickly as possible. But when I arrived at the lawyer's office later that afternoon, I was met with a strange expression on her attorney's face, one that made the hairs on the back of my neck stand on end. "Mr. Logan, I'm sorry," she began, her voice low and careful. "Sorry? For what?" I asked, already dreading the answer. She cleared her throat, looking down at the papers in front of her. "There won't be a settlement. Amanda won't be contesting the divorce." "Why not?" I asked, confused. "She knows I have her cornered." "Mr. Logan," the lawyer hesitated, her eyes full of sympathy. "Amanda, she's gone." I blinked, the words not registering at first. "What do you mean, gone?" She sighed, looking pained. She took her own life yesterday." The room seemed to spin. I gripped the armrest of my chair, my mind struggling to process what she had just said. "No," I muttered, shaking my head. That's not possible. I just talked to her a few days ago. She was fine. She was with James." The lawyer's expression tightened. "It seems things weren't going well with James, either. From what I've gathered, he left her. She was facing a lot of pressure, losing the marriage, her reputation, and her relationship with him." I stared at the lawyer, my mind still refusing to accept what she was telling me. Amanda, gone. It didn't make sense. She was so strong, so defiant, even when she was lying. I had imagined her fighting tooth and nail, never giving in. But this? I didn't. I trailed off, my throat tight, my chest suddenly hollow. The lawyer slid a letter across the table, her voice soft. "She left this for you. It was found in her apartment." I stared at the envelope with my name written in Amanda's familiar handwriting. For a long moment, I couldn't bring myself to pick it up. It felt like poison, like touching it would make everything real. But eventually, with shaking hands, I opened it. The letter was brief. "Logan. I'm sorry. I know that doesn't mean much now, and I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. I made terrible choices, and I hurt you in ways I can't take back. James was never what I thought he was. None of it was. I lost myself somewhere along the way, and by the time I realized it, I had already destroyed the life we had built. I don't know how to fix it. I don't know how to fix me. I don't expect you to understand or forgive me, but I want you to know that I did love you once. Maybe I still do, in some broken, twisted way. I just didn't know how to be the person you needed me to be. I'm tired, Logan. Tired of pretending. Tired of the lies. And I'm sorry for everything. Please take care of yourself. Be better than I was. Amanda." My hands trembled as I finished reading, the words blurring through the tears I hadn't realized were forming. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. It felt like my heart had been ripped out of my chest, not by her affair, not by her betrayal, but by the weight of her final words. I had wanted revenge. I had wanted to make her pay for what she had done, to make her feel the pain she had caused me. But I hadn't wanted this. I hadn't wanted her to break completely, to fall so far that she saw no way out. I had played the part of the cold, calculating husband, thinking it would give me satisfaction. But all it had given me was this, a void, a loss that I hadn't anticipated. I left the lawyer's office in a daze, walking through the streets with no destination in mind. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the city, but I barely noticed. My thoughts were consumed with the last few months, the games, the deception, the carefully laid plans for revenge. In my quest to hurt her, I had missed the signs that she was already unraveling. When I got home, the house felt colder than ever. The silence was suffocating, and for the first time, I wished Amanda would walk through the door, even if it was with another lie on her lips. I wanted to hear her voice, to yell at her, to scream, to cry, anything to make this crushing emptiness go away. But she wasn't coming back. In the weeks that followed, I couldn't escape the overwhelming grief that settled in my bones. People called to offer their condolences, but their words were empty, meaningless. They didn't know the truth, didn't know that in the end, we had both lost. I had thought revenge would heal me, but all it did was leave me more broken than before. There was no satisfaction, no closure, just regret. Regret that I hadn't seen her pain, that I hadn't realized sooner how far she had fallen. Regret that I hadn't tried to save her when I still could. And now, it was too late. The house felt like a tomb, filled with memories that would never fade. Everywhere I looked, I saw her, laughing, smiling, lying. And I saw myself, standing by, blind to the truth until it was too late. I had gotten my revenge, but it had cost me everything. And in the end, there was no victory, only loss.